In today's video, I'm bringing you guys 5 players that I am personally trading for in my fantasy football leagues. There's some controversial names, but I think there's some really good reasons why. So why don't we go ahead and just get straight to it with a name that I know is going to cause some controversy. In fact, every single person on the planet is telling you to sell this player right now. But my argument is, if every single person is saying sell, 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 to me, that's a player that potentially becomes a buy. And we are talking about buying low on Garrett Wilson. So far in 2023, it's not been great. It's not what we hoped. He's currently the wide receiver 30 on the year. He has 12 receptions on 22 targets for 165 yards and 2 touchdowns. And if we're being 100% honest and transparent, it's the 2 touchdowns that have really bailed him out. It could have been even worse than what it is right now. So I'm going to give you the good and the bad about Garrett Wilson, okay? Again, I don't think anyone is making a video telling you to buy Garrett Wilson, but I think because of how obvious it is to sell him, he genuinely does become a good buy. So let's talk about the bad so far, okay? The bad. Number 1, currently, Garrett Wilson is a wide receiver 30 and was drafted as a top 10 guy. So if you drafted him, he's unquestionably let you down. Number 2, he's averaging only 13.5 points per game, which again is 30th in points per game amongst wide receivers. Number 3, Zach Wilson is his quarterback, and Zach Wilson is atrocious at playing the quarterback position. Let's look at this. So far in 2023, Zach Wilson, his completion percentage, 52.4%. That is 40th in the NFL. Dead last of any starting quarterback. I mean, guys, there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and Zach Wilson is 40th in completion percentage. In passing yards per game, he is 30th, 155 a game. Adjusted net yards per attempt, he is 37th. Shout out to Fantasy Points data for that information. His quarterback passing rating is 39th amongst quarterbacks, 57. His catchable throw percentage is 40th. So the passes that he is throwing, the catchable percentage of those throws, 40th amongst starting quarterbacks. His turnover worthy throw percentage is currently the 10th highest in the NFL at 4.8%. Again, guys, keep in mind, there are 32 starting quarterbacks in the NFL, and so many of those important quarterback metrics and analytics where we measure quarterback play, he's in the late 30s and sometimes early 40s. So that's obviously not good for Garrett Wilson. And the fourth thing that we'll talk about before we get to the good, this is the last thing we'll talk about from the bad category, is overall, this may be the worst offense in the NFL. Even worse than the Bears, this might be the worst offense in the entire NFL right now. Check this out. Offensive points per game, the Jets are last. Total yards per game, they are last. Passing yards per game, last in the NFL. Red zone attempts per game, last in the NFL. And first downs per game, second to last in the NFL. You might be saying, wow, this is one hell of a buy low take, Zach. You're telling us why this team is awful, why Garrett Wilson's quarterback is bad. Are you sure this is a buy low? Okay, so we've talked about the bad. Let's talk about the good for Garrett Wilson. Okay, firstly, I scripted this video to record. I scripted it on Monday of this week. And then I woke up to reports on Tuesday that the Jets internally are not on the same page about Zach Wilson. I was about to talk about how bad his quarterback play is, and it looks like there's some rumblings that are supporting my narrative here, which only makes me more confident of this take. We saw a report from Rich Simi of ESPN. He said that Robert Saleh is coming off as the Zach Wilson apologist, and that isn't sitting well in the locker room. The Jets defense in particular is not happy. He goes on to quote them, and he says, this defense knows if any other player were performing his job the way Wilson is performing his, that player would be benched. Trust me, the tension is in that locker room. I get the sense that the team could be ready to implode. So we're on the same page, me and the guy who reported this. We also just saw the Jets sign Trevor Siemian. After hearing all the information that I just told you about how bad this offense is, how bad Zach Wilson is, how the team internally is about to implode, what percentage chance, genuinely I'm asking you, what percentage chance Do you believe that Zach Wilson remains the starting quarterback for this team in the next 4 weeks alone? What percentage chance? Comment down below. Let me know, what is that chance? For me, it is a less than 2% chance that Zach Wilson remains a starter in the next 4 weeks. So finally, we've come to the good part of the take. The good is change is coming. Change is on the way for the New York Jets for Garrett Wilson. And keep in mind, last year, Garrett Wilson was really good with average quarterback play. We are getting well below average quarterback play right now. Last year, Garrett Wilson had Zach Wilson, Mike White, Joe Flacco, and Chris Streveler at quarterback. And I want to specifically look at last year, and I want to look at Garrett Wilson's production with Zach Wilson and without Zach Wilson, okay? So without the out of split, that's with Mike White, Flacco, and Chris Streveler. So in games, so you'll see, shout out to RotoViz for this information. Last year, Garrett Wilson in games with Zach Wilson, okay, averaged 10 points per game. In games without Zach Wilson, 17.3 PPR points per game. You can see the receptions per game are up drastically. The touchdowns per game up. The targets per game from 6 to almost 12. We're almost doubling the amount of targets we're getting per game in the games without Zach Wilson. And our receiving yards go from about 50 to 82. In fact, that not only includes the 2022 season, but also this year with Zach Wilson in the games where he's been actually okay because of the touchdowns. Over 17 PPR points per game. And it's not like he was putting up those numbers with incredible quarterback play. It was just competent. So to finish, what I was going to do was I was going to name, I planned this all out. I was going to name all the quarterbacks that the Jets could bring in, either via free agency or via trade, that would improve Garrett Wilson's fantasy value. They've already brought in Trevor Siemian. We saw that happen. But here's a couple other names. If Trevor Siemian stays on the practice squad, how about via free agency? You got Carson Wentz out there, Matt Ryan, Colt McCoy would be better. Joe Flacco, bring the man back. Nick Foles, and I had Trevor Siemian there. They already signed him. How about via trade? If this team really wants to compete, go get Mike White from the Dolphins. How about Josh Johnson, Mitch Trubisky, Ryan Tannehill? It's falling apart in Tennessee. Cooper Rush, they have Trey Lance. Cooper Rush showed he was competent. Teddy Bridgewater. Go get Kirk Cousins if this team truly does fall to 0-4 or 0-5. Go get Joshua Dobbs when Kyler Murray is back. Hear what I am saying, guys. Please hear what I am saying. I am not sitting here claiming that Garrett Wilson will be a top 10 wide receiver this year. What I am claiming is that if no one wants to buy Garrett Wilson and everyone is telling you to sell him, at some point he becomes a buy. And we know that quarterback change is 99% likely to be on the way. There will be a change at quarterback, which will help Garrett Wilson. We saw how good he was with average quarterbacks last year. Okay, so here are some players that I would send away to acquire Garrett Wilson. I know it's crazy, guys, but I really feel like if you hear what I'm saying, you'll see the value here, potentially sleeping value. So what I did is I came up with ideas on my own of names that you could explore trades. And I also used the Fantasy Calculator database. They have a trade database over there on the website, and they take information from real leagues from every different platform, and they show you real trades that have happened. So I'm going to look at my ideas, which align with ECR rest of season rankings and Fantasy Calculator trade database trades that have actually happened. Okay, so you can get a good gauge on what you could trade away to get Garrett Wilson. And please keep in mind, there is no perfect one-for-one deal. There's no perfect trade. Every league is different. People are going to value players differently in different leagues. What might happen in another league might not happen in yours, but these are some names to start conversations around. So my ideas, if you can go send Chris Godwin, I would rather have Garrett Wilson. Christian Kirk is coming off multiple really good games. I see Zay Jones coming back and that changing. Isaiah Pacheco, Elijah Moore is getting the targets. Romeo Dobbs off those 2 good games that he's had this year. Adam Thielen. I mean, the guy's kind of tearing it up right now with Andy Dalton. You could at least start a conversation. Even Josh Palmer, right? Josh Palmer, one of the biggest pickups off the waiver wire this week, will be kind of falling into a bunch of opportunities. I'd rather have Garrett Wilson long term. And here are some trades that actually went down over on the database that they collect from different websites. Someone did trade Chris Godwin for Garrett Wilson. Someone traded Rashid Shaheed, Najee Harris, Tyler Algier, Tyler Boyd, and Cam Akers for Garrett Wilson. So again, guys, if everyone's telling you to sell, there is inevitably going to be leagues where you can buy him pretty affordably and he becomes a buy. So hate me all you want in the comments. That's okay, but hopefully you're on the same page with me. All right, my sell high we'll talk about now. I brought you a buy low, and now I'm going to bring you a sell high. And hang in there with me, but I think it's time to sell high on Zach Moss. In 2023, he's the RB13 in fantasy football. He's averaging 4.4 yards per attempt and has 2 total touchdowns on the year. Let's be honest here for a second, okay? Even as I'm telling you to sell him high, I have to admit, Zach Moss has been incredible for fantasy purposes. He really has. I did advise you guys to go out and pick up Zach Moss before the season began off the waiver wire, but even I myself can hold my hands up, both of them, and say I did not see this coming. I really did not see him doing this well. Let's check it out. In 2023, Zach Moss is third in rushing attempts per game, is third in rushing yards per game. He is sixth in rushing attempts on the year. Keep in mind, he's only played 2 games. All these other guys have played 3, and he is somehow sixth in rushing attempts. He's averaging 24 carries a game. He has more rushing attempts than Ken Walker, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, and Raheem Mostert. His rushing attempt share, which by the way, that is the percentage of your team's rushing attempts when you were active. He has the number 1 percentage in the league, 82.8% of his team's rushing attempts when he's been active. That's ridiculous. He has the number 1 snap percentage of any running back. And in points per game, he's currently 6th amongst running backs at 21.6. He has been absolutely incredible this year. I completely agree. However, I personally have my own concerns. Let me ask you, do we trust a 2-game sample size for Zach Moss this year, or a 4-year sample size over 39 games that we have seen from Zach Moss that tells us he's an average replaceable quarterback? Which one of those two do we trust? Okay, for the sake of this video, because we could go through the entire 4 years, but for the sake of this video, let's look at Zach Moss in 2022 and 2021. Let's look at those seasons and the type of efficiency and numbers that we got from Zach Moss. Okay, so in 2022, rushing yards per game, he was 49th. Rushing attempts on the year, he had 93. That was 46th in the NFL. Rushing attempt share, 27.1%, which was 53rd in the NFL. Snap percentage, he was 69th amongst running backs. Fantasy points per game, he was at 562nd. His PFF rush grade wasn't in the top 50. His breakaway percentage, which is the percentage of runs that went for more than 15 yards, was in the low 40s. And his yards per route run, because I know he just scored a receiving touchdown, but he's not a receiving threat really. He's never been 116th in the NFL last year. If we go ahead and look at 2021, the year before that, you can see all these numbers are relatively similar. This has been a completely average running back for 4 years. And now he's kind of a superstar for fantasy in 2 weeks. I'm trusting the 4-year sample size of who Zach Moss is as a player over 2 games, okay? Make no mistake, this is a replaceable running back who is currently falling into a ton of volume and unquestionably exceeding expectations. I just told you that. But most importantly, when Jonathan Taylor is back, Moss is completely irrelevant for fantasy purposes, okay? I am starting to see a narrative form over on the Twitter sphere that when Jonathan Taylor's back, people are saying this, they're saying this, people in this industry are saying this. When Jonathan Taylor's back, it's a split backfield. People are saying it's going to be a 50-50 workload, that Zach Moss is going to have just as much of a role as Jonathan Taylor. Guys, are we serious? This is the same Zach Moss that couldn't beat out Devin Singletary for 4 years in Buffalo. And now he's going to reduce Jonathan Taylor to a role player? I don't see it. I mean, I just showed you the type of production and efficiency he had in the last 2 years, and his biggest competition, again, was Devin Singletary, not Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor's currently on IR and is eligible to return in week 5. If Jonathan Taylor joins this team, it's my strong belief that you will be left with a dead asset on your team. Zach Moss will no longer be a guy that you can start with any sort of confidence. The only way holding on to Zach Moss right now is going to pay off is if Jonathan Taylor gets traded, and I really struggle to see that happening. I mean, with Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert doing their thing in Miami, that was the biggest trade destination. I don't see that happening. With the Minnesota Vikings getting Cam Akers, I think they're fine, Cam Akers. And with the asking price that the Colts have set, I just don't think anyone meets that asking price. Essentially, now is the time to capitalize on this incredible run. Zach Moss is about to play the Rams, and I think he's going to be a great start. So maybe you wait one more week. You have to determine, if you wait another week and we start hearing rumors about Jonathan Taylor being back, would you have missed your sell high opportunity? You have to decide that. I would like to sell him high right now. And we have to keep in mind, Evan Hull, which is a rookie running back that this team was excited about, hasn't really been available. He's been injured and he will be back. Surely he would get opportunities. So look, I think this is a prime time to sell Zach Moss. Let me know if you agree or disagree. But here are some players that I would send away. These are my ideas based on ECR rest of season rankings. I would rather have Josh Jacobs, Brian Robinson, Kyron Williams, James Conner, James Cook, Joe Mixon, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper. Now, here are some trades that we have seen across all different platforms. We have seen people trade Zach Moss for Jahmyr Gibbs, for DeAndre Swift, for Jerome Ford plus a player that's important, for Miles Sanders plus a player, a wide receiver that's important, for Devonta Smith. These are all trades that I would personally advise that you do. I think you're going to capitalize on his current value. Okay, I got another buy, but this isn't a buy low. This is someone that I would advise for you to buy high on. It's my guy for the 2023 season. That is Jordan Addison. It's been really, really fun to watch Jordan Addison so far on my fantasy teams. Hopefully you drafted him as well. Regardless, let's go trade for some more Jordan Addison. He's the wide receiver 24 on the year, and his role is growing every single week, and that should not be a surprise to anyone. We see rookie wide receivers, their role grows every week in their rookie season. It just happens. We know this. There's so much history of this. Check this out. Jordan Addison, what I did is I looked at week 1 versus week 2 versus week 3. All right, his snap percentage goes up every single week drastically. His targets, we go from 6 to 5 to 8. His routes run every single week, he has a higher amount of routes run, from 29 to 33 to 42 routes run in week 3. And his routes per team dropback, which is what you'll see that last category there, his routes per team dropback in a percentage, 61 to 71 to 76%. Jordan is continually getting more and more involved in this offense. You haven't seen the best of him yet. Addison was the wide receiver that I predicted before the season, leading all rookies in production from the wide receiver spot. Now, obviously, Puka's done his thing, but last year, that prediction for me was Chris Olave. Now, on a per game basis, he actually did. On a per game, he outproduced Garrett Wilson. So let's take a look at what Olave did last year, because again, Olave, first round rookie wide receiver, even he was ramped up through the first 3 weeks. His snap percentage goes up every single week. His targets go from 3 to 13 in week 2 and 3. His routes run go up every week. His routes per team dropback, again, go up every single week from 77 to 83 to 93%. Again, this is what happens to rookie wide receivers. Expect Jordan Addison to get more opportunities, to be in more 2 wide receiver sets, and to run more routes every single week as he gets acclimated to this offense. And the last thing I'll say is this is the perfect offense for fantasy success. I sounded like a broken record all offseason. I kept saying the Vikings are a fantasy factory, and we're seeing that, guys. Check this out. The Vikings in 2023, first in passing attempts per game, second in pass yards per game, first in passing touchdowns per game, third in total yards per game, 12th in red zone attempts per game, 10th in first downs per game. And what makes it even better if you own these guys in fantasy is that their defense is still just as bad as it was last year. They're giving up the 27th they're 27th in opponents' yards per game. All right. They're 26th in opponents' points per game. So they're passing the ball a ton. Jordan Addison's going to get a ton of work. Their defense is giving up a lot of yards, a lot of points. It's a fantasy factory. This is a perfect place for Addison to thrive. So if you can get him, buy him high, go grab him. Here's some ideas that I came up with. Trade Terry McLaurin, Drake London, Deontay Johnson, DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Christian Kirk, Cortland Sutton, Hollywood Brown. And here are some trades that actually happened in real leagues. Someone sent Tutu Atwell away. DeAndre Hopkins, Gabe Davis, Isaiah Pacheco, Zach Moss. I would love to do that. Khalil Herbert, Damian Pierce. With the state of the running back room, if you have really good running backs and someone in your league needs running back, you could send a average running back for Addison at this moment, potentially. All right, I have 2 more trades for you guys to talk about. The next one is a buy low. That is Josh Jacobs. I know Josh Jacobs has been disappointing this year. There's no way around it. He's been a disappointment. He's the RB 25 on the year, but this is a very simple take and it won't take long. This is all about volume. His volume is still elite, and I just don't believe that what we've seen so far is what we will see for the rest of the year. Josh Jacobs will get better, in my opinion. I talked about the volume. Josh Jacobs in 2023, snap percentage amongst running backs, he is 4th, over 80% of the snaps he is seeing. His rushing attempt share, so the percentage of his team's rushing attempts, he's 6th amongst running backs, over 71%. His expected fantasy points, which by the way, this is from Fantasy Points Data, great website. They take into account a team market share for the running back, both on the ground and in the air, as well as red zone attempts, depth of target. And based off of that, they say, based on the opportunities you've been given, what are you expected to do in fantasy football? So Josh Jacobs expected fantasy points. He should be the RB6 right now based off his opportunities. In points per game, he should be the RB11. He is currently in points per game, the RB31. So there's about 6-point difference between the opportunities that he's been given and what we expect and what he's done. I believe that with the volume and with the talent, give him time to get into his zone. He wasn't with the team all offseason. He will find his form again. So you have to decide, who do you think Josh Jacobs is this year? Is he the guy we've seen through 3 weeks? Is he the guy who's averaging 36 yards per game and 2.4 yards per attempt? Or is he closer, maybe not the same guy, or is he closer to the guy he was last year and he just needs time? Last year when he was averaging 97 yards per game, almost 5 yards per attempt, and he finished with 12 touchdowns. I think we will see better play from Jacobs moving forward, and I think he's a good buy low because volume is there. Here's some players that I would send away to go out and get a Josh Jacobs. How about Zach Moss? I talked about it earlier. I would want to rely on Zach Moss rest of the season, not Josh Jacobs. Raheem Mostert, currently the RB1. I'd rather have Jacobs. I know it's incredible right now. I just don't think we can rely on that. Derrick Henry, I'd send away. I told you guys to sell high on Derrick Henry in week 1. Hopefully you did. Alvin Kamara, Jonathan Taylor, Devon Achane, Mike Evans, Michael Pittman, and DJ Moore. And here are some trades that have happened in real life, in real leagues, in 12-man formats. Someone has sent away Jerome Ford, Brian Robinson, Damian Pierce, Rachaad White plus a piece, Gabe Davis, Garrett Wilson. All those trades have happened for people to go out and get Josh Jacobs on their team. And the last buy low I have for you guys today, I'll try and make this one quick, but I do think there is value. Darren Waller. I know it's been tough. It's been rough, okay? But you don't get to buy low on superstars, right? Buy lows are players that have underperformed that we think will be better. So far, he's a tight end 8 on the year. Just for a moment, let's review the Giants season together. Let's think about this. The first thing we need to talk about is the offensive line. They've been dealing with key injuries in every game this year. In their most recent game versus the 49ers, 3 of their 5 starting offensive linemen were out and more got hurt during the game. You'll see why that's been a problem here in a second. But let's review their season so far. Week 1, 40-0 butt whooping against the Cowboys. Daniel Jones was pressured all night. It was bad weather. Jones was sacked 7 times for a loss of 47 yards. In that game, Darren Waller was somehow the only bright spot. He caught 3 receptions for 36 yards. In week 2, they had the huge comeback. This is the only positive for the Giants this entire year. They came back from 20-0 at half. They won that game. And in spite of Daniel Jones being sacked 9 times for negative 75 yards in that game, Darren Waller and he were on the same page. Darren caught 6 passes for 76 yards. Then in week 3, again, another really bad game. They got rocked by a superior team in the 49ers. The O-line was a mess. Waller and Jones couldn't get on the same page. But can we be real with each other for a second? Without Saquon Barkley, without 3 of your starting 5 offensive linemen, were the Giants ever going to compete in that game versus one of the best defenses in the NFL? I don't think so. In the first 3 weeks, the Giants are tied for the 3rd most sacks allowed per game. Why did I tell you all this? I told you all this because I am personally not believing that what we've seen from the Giants offense in the first 3 weeks is representative of what we'll see in weeks 4 to 17. And we have to keep in mind that these offensive linemen are getting more and more healthy. They'll get 2 of their 3 missing starters back this week, one of them being Andrew Thomas, one of their most important pieces on the offensive line, the most important piece at left tackle for Daniel Jones. That will make Daniel Jones more comfortable in the pocket, which will lead to more opportunities for Darren Waller, we hope. And despite Darren Waller's circumstances, keep in mind, those 2 of 3 games so far have been a nightmare. Nightmare matchups, nightmare situations, nightmare weather. Nightmare. If you know, you know. But even then, in 2023, Darren Waller is top 10 in routes run, in targets, in first read target percentage, in team target share, in team yards percentage, in air yard share, in receiving yards per game. There are better days ahead for Darren Waller. He is still the number 1 target on this team. This offense will be better, and he will finish top 5 at the position. So here's some players that I would send away: Dameon Pierce, DeAndre Hopkins, Isaiah Pacheco, Hunter Henry, Dallas Goedert, Khalil Herbert, Christian Kirk, and Gabe Davis. And here are some names that have been traded in real leagues, real 12-man leagues: Zach Charbonnet, Kendrick Bourne, Zach Ertz, AJ Dillon and Rashid Shaheed, Jake Ferguson, and Rashad White. Okay, I've been talking a lot, but I really feel good about all these guys that I just brought to you. I know some will be controversial. Most of them won't be consensus, but do you really want me to go out and tell you to trade for Jalen Waddle? Like, duh. Trade for Jalen Waddle. He's a superstar. Do you really want me to tell you to go trade for Jamar Chase? Like, I tried to find guys that are actually available in trades and guys that you can actually sell high. So I hope you really enjoyed the video. Go ahead and drop a like to show me some love. And if you want personalized advice from myself and Badaki, we have something called the Fantasy Hotline, which is a direct DM to us for advice. All you need to do to unlock that is sign up to the Flock Fantasy website with our promo code LAND. All you got to do is do that. DM us on Discord. We'll get you all set up. You'll have my weekly rankings over there. Great articles from the best fantasy minds in the industry. But outside of that, that is it for today, guys. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think, and we'll see you very soon. Now that those idiots are done talking, who needs some rankings?
Hell yeah, I need some rankings.
Then use promo code LAND, L-A-N-D, for 30% off any membership at flockfantasy.com.
Oh.
It's so easy. Even your grandma could scan that QR code right there.